So the trailer for the new Game of Thrones spin-off show A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms has dropped today. I'm sorry if my voice is a little hoarse today. I was singing and screaming my heart out at Lady Gaga last night at the Mayhem Ball in Manchester. Oh, I also lost several nails. So the first episode of this show is going to air Sunday, January the 18th next year. First impressions of this trailer. I liked it. I'm going to run through the trailer and break it down a little bit, explain a bit of what's going on and where we're at in the story and so on and so forth, but I'm not going to give away any spoilers. The first question a lot of people have about this show is, well, when is it set? Like, where does it fit in with Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon? It's pretty much halfway between those two shows. King Daeron II of House Targaryen is on the Iron Throne. Not for much longer, actually. It's like near the end of his reign. So House Targaryen, they're in charge, but they don't have any dragons anymore. And so that rubs some Targaryens the wrong way. The heart of this story is about Sir Duncan the Tall and this young kid called Egg. And you'll often hear people talking about this story and using the names Dunk and Egg and A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms interchangeably. I know I do it all the time. So the thing with Dunk, who's played by Peter Claffey, and lovely accent, by the way. Very nice. Very appealing to the ear. Here's a guy who we see at the beginning of this trailer, and he's burying this old man. And the old man is called Sir Arlen of Pennytree. And he was a hedge knight, which basically means you're a freelance knight. You're not fixed to any one house. You travel around and you serve who you choose to serve. Now, Dunk, we know him as Sir Duncan the Tall, but he's not really a knight when we first meet him. He is actually an orphan from Fleabottom in King's Landing. He comes from nothing, right? And he joins up with Sir Arlen of Pennytree to kind of learn the ropes. Sir Arlen dies at the very beginning of the story, and Dunk, he buries him and he gives him this dignity. But Dunk has a problem because he kind of put all of his eggs in this basket. And with Sir Arlen's death, he's like, well, what am I to do now? How am I going to learn? How am I going to survive? I'm now on my own. And he thinks, you know what? I'll take part in a tourney. There's one being held in the Reach at Ashford Meadow. I'll chance my luck, see how I do. Maybe I'll win the prize. If he can do that, then maybe this could be a step up in the world, because Dunk does not have a whole lot of options. On the way to this tourney, he bumps into this young kid called Egg. And I think the best word to describe Egg is precocious. He's cheeky, he's charming, and that definitely came across in the trailer. He's played by Dexter Saul Ansel, and he came across very cute and very charming. And you can tell from the bits we saw in the trailer that Dunk and Egg click. And he's basically tagging along with Dunk. But Dunk is like, don't annoy me. And don't try and steal anything. Don't nick anything. Don't be playing games. I've got my eye on you. I liked the humour we got in the trailer. There was a lot of that. And some of the best moments in Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon, but especially Game of Thrones, where there was funny moments that broke through all the seriousness and the drama. Now, Ira Parker, who is the showrunner for A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, he said last week in this interview that we're not going to see the lords and ladies perspective like we're used to, because that's what we see in House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones. That's how everything is set up. It's from the perspective of the noble, of the highborn. And Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, that's going to do things differently. You're going to see the perspective of regular people. We're going to see people with familiar names like Dondarrion or Baratheon or Targaryen. You're going to recognise the names and you're going to recognise the world that this is set in, but we're going to see it from a totally different perspective. One person we meet is this lady, Tansel. Tansel Too Tall. She's a puppeteer. She's a regular person. She's just trying to make her way in life. When you have an event like a tourney, you have a lot of entertainers there. So it totally makes sense that we have someone like Tansel. And Dunk takes a liking to her. Put it that way. I really like this frame in particular because it looks like it's a performance of the story of Sir Serwyn of the Mirror Shield, which is like an ancient tale, a legend in Westeros about this knight who was coming up against a dragon. These are the stories that Dunk would have grown up with, that everyone would have grown up with. These tales of chivalrous knights. And that's something to bear in mind for Dunk, because in order for him to actually compete in this tourney, he has to be a knight. And so he says he is. He says, Sir Arlen knighted me. Unfortunately, he's not around to testify to this. You'll have to just take my word. And we meet actually a lot of different characters in the story in this trailer. My favourite, aside from Dunk and Egg, was definitely the Laughing Storm, aka Sir Lionel of House Baratheon. I mean, the yellow and black, the antler horns are a bit of a tell. I loved this clip here where you can tell him and Dunk, they've had a skinful, right? They've had a few. And it looks to me like Dunk is wearing Lionel's antler helm. Lionel Baratheon is one of the more dynamic characters in this story. He's very personable, very bombastic, if you will, very gregarious, charming, funny, witty. He's very in your face. He's not a wallflower, put it that way. Hence the name, The Laughing Storm. And that came across in the trailer. And I'm very excited to see what Daniel Ings does with this character. So far, I was really impressed. Another person that I had my eye on is played by Finn Bennett. And that character is Prince Aerion of House Targaryen. Now, Prince Aerion, he's a little shit. He's an arrogant prince. Thinks he's better than people. He's a pretty nasty piece of work. Dunk and Aerion are kind of like polar opposites. They're from totally different worlds. And we hear Egg in the trailer say, well, why do you bow down to these lords and ladies? Like, they're no different from, anyone else. And Dunk is like, no, they are different, because he's been raised with this social hierarchy. One of the themes in this particular story is classism. We're going to see things through the perspective of the average person, the small folk. From just that trailer, I like it. It's not going to be big dragon battles, because there are no dragons. And it's not going to be like the courtly scheming that we're used to with Game of Thrones, but that doesn't mean nothing's going on. There is a story being told here, and it's an important story. We do get a quick glimpse of a trial of 7, which is basically 7 knights versus 7 knights. And it's, you're fighting, you're on horseback. It's a fight to the death. It's a totally original George R.R. Martin story. And what gives me confidence is he said, I've seen all 6 episodes and he likes it. He's given it the stamp of approval. So let me know, what did you guys think of the trailer? And if you have any specific questions about this particular story or about the spin-off in general, do leave me a comment. There's also probably going to be a lot more information about this show that comes out over the course of the New York Comic Con event that's happening this weekend. They're going to be doing like a panel and everything. So I imagine we're going to get some more juicy tidbits in the next couple of days as well.